Hi, and welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, Bonusgate in the state capitol. 3 more are charged by the Attorney General. John Micek and John Baer will analyze. Then the popular financial literacy update. Pennsylvania government and politics in depth and in detail. It all starts right now.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Hi, and welcome back. Happy holidays, everybody. Well, they're back at it at the state capitol. We have 3 of the state's top reporters. Actually, one's a columnist. He's sitting right there, John Baer, Philadelphia Daily News. You got to read his column, by the way. It's a hoot, John, I think. Is that fair to say?
We aim to please, Terry.
We aim to please. And a reporter and blogger extraordinaire, John Micek from the Allentown Morning Call. All right. Sure. John Micek, I want to start with you. Lay out the facts, and then I'll let John weigh in on some interpretation. The Attorney General back at it. 3 people, charges have been brought against 3 additional subjects. We're now up to 25 by my count. That's in right. Total. Lay out the allegations against the 3
people.
Sure.
On Tuesday, Terry, the Attorney General charged the House Majority Whip Bill DeWeese of Greene County, one of the legislature's longest-serving members, the State Revenue Secretary Stephen Stetler, and a DeWeese aide named Sharon Rodovich, with multiple counts of conspiracy, theft, and conflict of interest for broadly, using taxpayer funds and taxpayer-funded employees for campaign purposes, for fundraising, and for so-called opposition research into political candidates. Mr. DeWeese, under House rules, had to resign his leadership post. Mr. Stetler, a former state lawmaker, these charges, we should add, were lodged for Mr. Stetler's former life as chairman of the House Democratic Campaign Committee right. In 2006, gave up his post as Revenue Secretary on Tuesday morning in advance of the charges. Today is Thursday. Shortly before we went on air, all 3 of those people appeared in a district magistrate's office in Dauphin County.
Not in handcuffs.
Not in handcuffs, and all 3 were released on $50,000 bond, own recognizance.
Yeah, that's a little unusual. I thought the whole deal was, John, the perp walk with
Well,
handcuffs.
What you do, Terry, you get the right local lawyer who knows how the system works, and you show up way early
right?
before the media, and you go in the back, and then you try to come out the back. They've learned from past. There's been enough experience around to teach these guys how to do it.
John, this is 25 people and counting. The Attorney General, I know I saw you. You were at the press conference. I saw you on PCN. You were there watching. Is there more to follow? I mean, look.
Almost certainly. I mean, don't you think? I mean, he said at the outset, I mean, a year and a half ago, I mean, he said that we're going to look at all 4 caucuses. And
we're down. We got 2 done.
We got 2 done. Is there any sensate person in the state that believes that only members of the House have ever abused the power of their office? I got to think this goes on for a couple of years by the time you do further investigations, more grand juries, trials. Trials can take forever.
Now, this all centers around, John Micek, this all centers around a real central question, and you pointed this out. The legislators' leadership, caucus-driven, out of the core of the caucus, the ability to hold on to power, essentially running elections out of the caucuses. I mean, isn't that, using camp staffers, using resources? I mean, isn't that at heart wrapped around most of the charges? Maybe not for Senator Fumo. We may let you get back to that in a moment, John.
I mean, it's the scandal is called Bonusgate, but really at this stage it's become a misnomer. I mean, broadly you're correct. Yeah. It's about the use of taxpayer dollars to further the electoral fortunes of, so far, House Democrats and House Republicans. There was an interesting and sort of telling moment yesterday afternoon when Mr. Corbett kind of threw his hands up in the air in exasperation and said, when are these guys going to learn? It's very simple. You don't use public employees for political purposes.
John Baer, I think they have learned now. I mean, you watch this. I mean,
I think they have too.
Go ahead.
I mean, it's very interesting to me now when you call the chairman of the House Democratic Campaign Committee, Mike Gerber, a nice young guy from Montgomery County. If you call his legislative office, they will refer you to the out-of-building office of the campaign. He will not call you back from his office. He will call you from a private number cell phone. So I think the message has gotten out. I mean, if you look at the charges, the scope of these charges against DeWeese and others this week, go from 2001 to 2007.
Right.
Since this investigation started, I think
cleaned
things have tightened up. The question is, how far can they go back, and who else is in the range?
Just the other day, in fact, I emailed a lawmaker about his electoral ambitions outside the legislature. In the old days, when that would have come back on a public email account,
now,
it came back on that lawmaker's private email account. It's amazing what a couple of subpoenas for emails will do for you.
Got that private BlackBerry going on. All right, we're talking with John Baer and John Micek about, we won't call it Bonusgate because that's not appropriate anymore, allegations about the misuse of state funds for political purposes. Back in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is sponsored by Citizens to Protect PA Jobs. When businesses add jobs, people prosper. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by PAConstructionJobs.com. For more information about rewarding careers in the highway construction industry, visit PAConstructionJobs.com. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Hi, welcome back. We're talking about the charges that were actually filed this past week by the Attorney General for three individuals in the continuing saga about using using state money for campaign purposes. John Micek, you and John Baer are really close observers of the legislature. I mean, you've covered it in and out. You look at bills. To what degree has this sort of set the legislature back in terms of its functioning? The House. Let's talk about the State House. I don't want to get too much in the weeds, but they didn't do a budget for 101 days. Do you think that they have new leaders? Do you think that some of these allegations have to have, and the indictments have to have serious implications for the way that legislature functions?
It's been suggested there's an unprecedented level of paralysis this year because of the investigations, because of the arrests. I'm not sure if it's directly causal. I mean, the thing with the budget was sort of its own beast and became self-perpetuating with the back and forth between the House and the Senate over the course of several months. But I have to imagine, that if you're House leaders and you're waiting for the hammer to theoretically fall from the Attorney General's office, and you're spending some amount of time either going in your House aides, and you're spending some amount of time being called before grand juries to testify. I mean, it does distract resources away from things that can be that need to be done.
John, look, you wrote a column in which you talked about this big divide, the philosophic and ideological difference, in a column that you wrote a couple of weeks ago. How much of the difficulty in the legislature? I mean, we talked about whether, first of all, do you think that the Bonusgate charges has made the legislature less functional? Let me ask you that.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think the legislature by nature is dysfunctional, as is almost every large organization. Yeah. But this has to be, as John suggests, a huge distraction because you don't know how broad, how deep, how far, and especially for leadership. And leadership is what makes the machine run. I mean, in the absence of a concentrated, focused leader in either chamber, you're not going to get anything done. And we've seen the results of that not only in the budget, in virtually any major kind of reform, and in table games that is still going on, a part of a budget that technically is not complete
but
here in mid-December.
I think the point you made was there's this huge philosophic or ideological divide now that we didn't quite see before. House Republicans united. I mean, a few go, but united against the budget, against spending, against the Rendell agenda. House Democrats with new leaders. Boy, there had to be a collective sigh of relief out of the Democratic leadership yesterday, or this past week in the House, when, others were not brought up for charges.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
But I think the ideological divide is a separate issue, Terry. I mean, I think that's a reflection of politics with a big P. I mean, you see it nationally, you see it in other states. The lines are so hard now that it's almost impossible to get a bipartisan compromise on any big issue. And I think that is part and parcel of the whole attitude that's sweeping across the country. I mean, we're just hardened ideologically, period.
Go ahead. I mean, and that is something that changed markedly in the wake of the 2006 and 2008 elections, which were, in fact, a direct reaction, at least 2008, in fact, was a direct reaction against a lot of the corruption that had been brought up with revelations about Bonusgate. You have members in now who are less ideologically flexible, who ran on platforms of trying to clean up Harrisburg. So I mean, in a way, I mean, it is big P politics, but there is sort of that undercurrent there that brought a lot of these people to Harrisburg to begin with.
John, what about the waning influence of Governor Rendell? His job performance in the polls is down. He's below 50%. It dropped pretty sharply. Now he's still above the legislature, which is not hard to be, I guess.
Hard to be.
But do you think the lessening of his influence, I mean, would you agree he's in the traditional lame duck period now?
He's in a tougher spot than he has been at any point in his incumbency, and he's never been in a great spot, as you know, dealing with a divided legislature, politically divided legislature. But yeah, and this happens to every governor in their last year or approaching their last year. Key members of his staff move on. When they have the opportunity. His agenda becomes less important as people look forward to the gubernatorial election and to their own re-election. So the focus is going to be on that, getting re-elected, and on another difficult budget year. I think any issues outside that are going to be hard to sell.
All right, table games coming up. As we speak, the Senate will probably not concur with the House. As we tape this program, we don't quite know what will happen, but John Micek and John, we don't need to know what happened to analyze it. We'll be back in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the State System of Higher Education. 14 state-owned universities. The state system is the largest provider of higher education in Pennsylvania. And by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back. We're talking about what we call Bonusgate, these charges that have been made against state office holders and employees who were doing campaign work. That's the allegation anyway. John Baer, the stakes couldn't be bigger for the Attorney General, not just in the charges that he's made this past week, but with the Mike Vion trial coming up on January 19th. Opine.
It is really the whole investigation is the core of his campaign for governor. For him personally, politically, the stakes could not be higher. Losing the case, the acquittal of former Beaver County Democratic Rep. Sean Romali is a setback. A number of people said they believed Corbett to be a little bit more reserved at his press conference earlier this week.
He was, wasn't he?
Well, maybe so, and maybe that defeat had something to do with it. Now, his argument is when you lose one, you get more focused. We'll see. I mean, the Vion case is obviously a very big case. A former member of leadership. If he were for any reason to lose that case.
John, wouldn't that just look, there are people who think he ought to resign, that he ought not to be able to run for governor. In fact, Babette Joseph, a state house member from Philadelphia, has a bill in the legislature to accomplish that. Is there a lot of pressure on him to resign? Or you think that's mostly one-sided coming from...
Mr. Gerlach, his competitor for the Republican nomination, has made lots of noise out of that. The Democrats have made lots of noise out of that. Mr. Corbett has proven remarkably immune to that sort of criticism. I don't think there's any... that's not on his radar screen. I don't think he'll resign or separate himself from the investigation.
We're out of time. Table games, as we speak, not passed, does illustrate the huge... It only passed narrowly in the House. Huge differences within the caucuses and among Democrats and Republicans on this issue?
Absolutely. Could be roulette wheels in the stockings for Christmas this year.
Roulette, I like that. All right. Thanks, John and John. All right. We come up our popular financial literacy update after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Penn Future, where we believe that every environmental victory grows the economy. And by the Pennsylvania Cyber Charter School. bringing educational innovation and freedom to the children of Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back to the program. Well, we're going to do our popular financial literacy update. Joining me, as often is the case, is Michael Wishnow. He's a senior VP with the Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. And sitting right over there is Laura Huggins. She's a youth ambassador with the same credit union. All right, Michael, let's happy holidays, by the way.
To you too.
And to you too, Laura. Look, let's start out with credit, consumer spending. Last spring, consumers were saving 4 or 5% net saving. Now, not quite as much. What's going on with consumer spending?
Well, I think that the economy, Terry, is such that consumers feel the need to save. Mm-hmm. And so the good news is the savings rate is up.
Right.
But Consumer Federation of America just did a poll, along with CUNA, our national organization, talking about spending going into this holiday season, and we've seen some of that come to fruition. And people are spending. People are spending about the same, maybe a little more, but they're not tightening like they did last year.
Yeah, some of the reports that I've seen on television, the cable networks do some reports say that spending's up just a little bit to reconfirm your point. Well, so additional spending, providing now you have all these cautions. Now I know you have an organization, you want to make some money. I know you're a nonprofit, but but you always want people to be cautious about this, don't you?
Oh, sure, because you have to spend within your means.
Yeah.
I mean, we all know people who have the post-holiday hangover, right?
Yeah.
I mean, at your credit union, you see people that are paying bills into April, May, June, and that's just crazy.
All right, we're ending this calendar year. We're going into a new year. Let's talk a little bit about what you think people ought to do. Now, this is words. This is not Clark Howard. We're not one of these, we're not doing all this. We're not doing a lot of it, but we're going to do a little bit of it. Okay, let's talk a little bit about what you think people ought to do to get their household finances in order, Laura.
First and foremost, they have to develop a written monthly and annual budget. Write down on paper exactly where your money goes. Those little trips to the vending machine really add up.
Yeah, they do, don't they?
Yes, absolutely.
And to the Mac machine or whatever.
That's even worse.
Yeah.
I actually spend almost $500, I noticed, in coffee. So.
Oh my gosh. $500. Well, I'd probably do the same with soft drinks, but so I keep count, right?
Right. So just write it down.
So that's number one. All right.
Yes. Number two, if you don't already have one, establish a relationship with a credit union or bank. Yeah. About 10 million Americans are actually unbanked, meaning they're not using mainstream financial institutions.
Michael, they're not going to those places. We said not to go to.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I mean, in essence,
mention the word. Come on, you can.
Predatory.
Oh, gee. Okay.
Yeah, many of them are getting ripped off.
All right, go ahead. Go ahead.
Another resolution would be to take a critical review of your personal debt. Pay down your debt. If you don't have a plan set, make one now, and pay down the most expensive debt first. That is the highest rate debt.
Now let me stop you right here, Mike and Laura, and turn to Mike about something. Look, we're not getting out of this recession until, economy 75% driven by consumer spending. So we have to have some spending here.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Some spending. Now, Laura says, look at your personal debt. But if you can, if you do have needs and you can spend.
Spend. I mean, there are a lot of bargains out there.
Boy, aren't there?
Bargain hunt. I mean, not, totally shut down your spending.
But this is actually a pretty good time to buy a house. If you can, to buy a car, to buy, appliances. I mean, I've never seen deals quite like this, perhaps since the last recession, right? All right, plan number 4.
Develop a plan to save and invest. About 70% of Americans are planning to return to work in their retirement years because of everything that's happened in the recent financial markets. So really develop a plan. Pay yourself first. Who better to pay than yourself for all the hard work you do?
So your point is, even if you squirrel away a little bit, I mean, tell me if I'm right about this. I always thought, that the whole point was take a little bit of money and put it away. And then if you earn more, you get a raise, put a little bit more. The whole point about saving is to do it repeatedly, to do it regularly. Am I right about that?
No, you're absolutely right. That way you get the benefit of compounding.
Yeah.
That yesterday's becomes more today, becomes more tomorrow. And over time, that compounding will really grow your nest egg.
Yeah. And the point is just to not, and then the other thing, Laura, you do not want to do is, And who knows, I think lots of people have done this, is you look at the 401k or you look at that retirement account and you need some money and you go and you snatch it and you take it out and spend it. Now that's utter disaster, isn't it?
Right. You don't want to do that. You don't want to touch your retirement.
The problem with that is that the other problem with that is, I think once you do it one time, how easy is it just to go in and, you know, take it out again? Boy, but that's hard. I mean, it's a tough economy. Right. And then the last point you have here, Laura, who are we teaching? Teach
your children about finances. It's one of the most important resolutions for 2010. Teach your kids about finances, because if we don't, the debt and bankruptcy rates among young adults will continue to rise. You know,
Mike, we talked about this before, and you have this relationship with school districts now, and talking about putting financial literacy components into now. Oh gosh, here we go. We're going to give teachers more to do. I'm going to get the email about that. But notwithstanding that, talk a little bit about that program and why that's important.
Well, it's extremely important that kids get it in the classroom, even if they're getting it at home, to be reinforced, but many of them aren't getting it at home. Yeah. And as far as the teachers are concerned, frankly, it's not one more subject matter to teach. Rather, they can take financial concepts and wrap it around the subjects they're already teaching. Yeah. In other words, they can teach math in a financial context.
Do young people even know how to balance a checkbook? Do they know?
Well, what's your experience, Laura?
Yeah, you're the youth ambassador. Chime in here.
Well, my husband actually told me not to share this, but when I got to college, I didn't know how to balance a checkbook. And I didn't know what a CD was.
Okay. But the point is that there's even some of this rudimentary thing. I mean, sort of like doing your banking with with the credit union or a bank or whatever saving, whatever institution you have online. I mean, people are saying now we do it online. That brings added advantages. It's cheaper, right? I mean,
oh, sure. More convenient. You can do it from home in your pajamas. You save postage. I mean, there's a million reasons. And I think it also appeals to your generation, doesn't it, Laura?
Absolutely. Yeah. Those, check registers are out.
Uh-oh, you mean, okay, go ahead. So I get rid of that? No.
You go online. Everything is online. It's so easy.
Well, before I let you go, I want to go back to one other thing, Michael. In this Consumer Reports magazine poll that you referred to, there was a statistic here that struck me. It says here that 23% of those surveyed said they will not pay off their holiday debt until March or later.
Those 23% are really starting behind the 8 ball for next Christmas, aren't they?
You got it. Yeah, you got it. All right, great job. All right, we'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers. I always say stay well, and have a great holiday.